Funeral services were held yesterday for Daunte Wright. He was shot and killed during a traffic stop. The former officer says she mistook her taser for a gun. And the nonpartisan group, the Citizens Crime Commission, has called for a major overhaul in policing. Richard Abourn is the president of that group and joins me now live. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you coming on board. Tell us what you believe is a major overhaul.
So I think policing reform in this country is proceeding in two large phases, and I think we're in phase one now. And that's the phase of deciding what we want our police doing and then building adequate oversight and disciplinary systems. It's phase two that I'm worried about, because after we complete phase one, we will still have police agencies with us. And I think it's time to think much more boldly and scrap the 19th century model of police forces that we now have in the United States and adopt a new model of police services throughout the United States. Police services designed to provide policing services in conformance with what's needed in the 21st century, taking into account all the things we've learned about the relationship between police and community and what we need to build and what we need to subtract. And what we need to subtract is excessive aggressiveness, racial bias, and any racial bias whatsoever in both the policing agencies and the criminal justice system. How do you do that? What we're proposing is we start recruiting to a police service a much broader range of skills than just recruiting police enforcers. So we would advocate bringing in people with mental health skills, with community building skills, with family development skills, with crisis intervention skills, with social work skills, etc. In other words, build into the skill set of the police service the kinds of skills that you need to best serve the public and best build partnerships. And then we would propose having a much higher focus on sergeants and lieutenants, who are the backbone of police agencies and who are the people in the best position to change a police agency, so that they understand that these are now police services, not police forces. A big difference. And then we have called for a radical change in the metrics of police agencies. Police departments rise and fall on their metrics. If you measure arrests and summonses, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get arrests and summonses. But if you also measure things like building good neighborhood relationships, solving neighborhood problems, working with other agencies to get the kind of prevention services that can be so effective in driving down crime, understanding what communities need to make the quality of life in those communities better, looking at conflict resolution, all those things can be measured. We can measure those things. And if we start measuring those things, police will begin to conform their behavior to those measurements. And we believe that that will be one of the best ways to reduce the incidence of bias, because implicit bias is throughout policing. It's throughout life, but it's throughout policing. And there's also this excessive aggressiveness that's throughout policing. And the reason we think that is because the studies clearly show that while implicit bias training can be very effective in making people understand the concept, it doesn't necessarily change behavior, and ditto for excessive aggressiveness. But the studies also show,
and Richard, I can appreciate those
between
points.
The neighborhoods, the more you reduce these factors. Sorry.
I don't mean to cut you off. I appreciate all of your points, but I have to ask you, there are people who believe that the system was actually designed to be like this. It's systemic racism that dates back generations. The system was designed to be that way, and there are many people who don't want to change the system. So your ideas sound wonderful, but to implement them would mean changing the minds of those who have the power to change the system. So my question to you is, can that be done? Will those people who recognize the system was designed to be against certain people or to be difficult for more parts of the population, can those people's minds be changed? And how do you address that? Because you're sort of starting at the bottom going up as opposed to starting at the top going down.
So you put your finger right on the most difficult problem. And I say 19th century police forces on purpose, because I understand the history of policing in both the United States and other countries. I do believe it can happen. I do believe that we need to adopt a certain boldness about this, and we need to start appealing to mayors and police commissioners and police chiefs to start embracing this new model. I fear if we don't do that, we'll be having this exact same discussion 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But we are at a pivotal moment, and we really need to seize this moment and radically change the way we do policing. I have to tell you, in an earlier part of my career, I helped build and lead the national gun control movement. I did that during the time when we ultimately passed the Brady Bill, the ban on assault weapons, and the ban on large magazines. When we started that work, people literally laughed at us. They said, it'll never happen. But the enduring lesson from that experience is that when good-minded people get together with common purpose and common direction, you can accomplish great things. And I think we're in that moment. And frankly, if we don't do it now, I don't know when we'll do it.
Well, that is very encouraging. I'm going to leave things on that note. Unfortunately, we're out of time, Richard, but thank you so much for joining us here on BNC Live. We really appreciate those insights. Take care.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.